In the shadows of the afterlife, where hope meets the ancient promise of wealth, what if the guardian of the dead held the key to your earthly abundance? Today we journey beyond the tombs and into the temple of hope. We're decoding the forgotten secrets of the call for favor and the eternal prayer dedicated to Anubis. Let the journey begin.
Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so today we're opening up a really focused source, Anubis, Prayers for Hope and Abundance. This material came from you, our listener, and our mission today is pretty clear. We want to cut through some of the spiritual language and really understand the specific, almost contractual requests being made. What did devotees actually expect Anubis to deliver? And just as importantly, what did they have to give back in return?
Exactly. And when we talk about ancient devotion, it's easy to assume it's all about, abstract spiritual feelings. But this source, wow, it immediately throws us into a highly practical system. What's really fascinating, I think, is how hope, right there in the title, is instantly tied to very concrete material things like wealth,
right,
health.
Right.
So we're using this deep dive as a bit of a shortcut, really, trying to get straight to the ritual economy, the give and take between the believer and the divine.
Yeah, it's less about just blind faith and more like a detailed spiritual blueprint for, success, here and now success. We really need to unpack the structure of these appeals, what they wanted, how they asked for it, and that unspoken spiritual contract that must have defined that relationship. It feels intense.
It does.
Okay, let's start with the framework then, the setting, because the source sets the atmosphere right away. The whole thing is situated within the Temple of Hope, and it introduces it with this phrase, imagine a place for blessings. Why is that so significant? Naming the actual place after hope.
Well, it signals the intention before anyone even utters a prayer, doesn't it? Just stepping into the Temple of Hope fundamentally frames the whole act as an optimistic venture. The entire practice is built on expecting a positive future, one that's achievable through this deity's help. So it grounds everything in future expectation, not just fixing past problems.
Yeah, that definitely sets a strong tone. But what really grabbed me was the sheer scale of that expectation. This isn't just hoping for a small favor, is it? Or a quick fix. The source uses these powerful, lasting terms like the legacy of hope and even an eternal prayer.
Mm-hmm.
That tells me the devotee was after something much bigger, much more permanent than just a short-term deal.
And that immediately brings up a really critical question, doesn't it, about the believer's mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Why put all that ritual energy into seeking an eternal contract?
Mm.
I mean, if most daily prayers are transactional, fix this, heal that, then asking for an eternal prayer, it suggests they weren't just looking for a bit of relief right now.
Right. What were they after then?
It feels like they were trying to lock in foundational stability, maybe even generational stability, wanting that divine favor to last indefinitely, perhaps across their own life and, their kids' lives too.
So less like a quick request and more like setting up a permanent spiritual insurance policy for the whole family line. Wow. What does pursuing that kind of permanence tell you about their everyday fears, their sense of vulnerability?
Yeah.
They must have felt incredibly exposed to need that kind of eternal divine guarantee against, things going wrong.
Exactly. It seems like they're trying to address that vulnerability by seeking an absolute guarantee, something that goes beyond their own lifespan, beyond the immediate present. It suggests, maybe, that if life was going okay, they desperately wanted to keep it that way, lock it in forever, which in turn justifies the seriousness, the gravity of the devotion required.
Okay, that desire for eternal security leads us straight to the results they expected. Let's move past the idea of hope for a second. What exactly did they want Anubis to protect forever? This is where it shifts from the abstract to, very practical needs.
Oh, it's starkly material. Really is. They defined abundance as basically the essentials for a complete, thriving life, right here on Earth. The source breaks this down into three core areas, and the first two are the absolute basics for security, health, and wealth.
And you see that practical order laid out really clearly. First, the physical, the prayers of well-being, they ask for health. Then the material follows. The promise of abundance, they ask for wealth. It's just pragmatic. You need your body to work properly to enjoy any prosperity, right?
But let's pause on that for a moment, because this may be the counterintuitive bit this source gives us. We're talking about prayers aimed at Anubis. Anubis, traditionally god of the dead, embalming, guide to the afterlife.
Yeah, that's the standard picture.
So why is this specific deity getting all these petitions for earthly wealth and immediate physical health? It seems odd at first glance.
That is the crucial insight, isn't it? The one you might miss just reading the surface. It completely shifts how we might understand his role, his function in the daily lives of these believers. It suggests Anubis wasn't just the god managing the transition through death, but maybe, just maybe, the ultimate guarantor of a complete life, covering the journey through life and the safe passage after.
Right. If he's the one who stabilizes that transition to the next world, then his power over life and death is, well, absolute. So the logic follows. If he can guarantee eternal stability after life, surely he can also guarantee a few extra healthy years and, a comfortable existence before life ends. The focus on health and wealth, light's material foundations, is just incredibly strong given his usual job description, so to speak.
And this wasn't just about hoping for good luck to fall into their lap either, the prosperity they wanted. They expected active help, defense against threats.
Absolutely. They didn't just ask for wealth, they asked for the power to keep it, to protect it.
Yeah.
They sought help through the protective circle. That defensive part is crucial to the whole deal. It sort of elevates the deity from just a provider to a bodyguard, which suggests they felt a constant need for vigilance against, well, unnamed dangers that could snatch away their security.
Unseen threats. And the way they kicked off this huge request, the lasting health, the generational wealth, the active protection, it was very formal. It starts with the call for favor, asking him directly for this powerful, enduring help. And ultimately, if you pull all these pieces together, the goal seems to be captured by the blessing of life. They seek his help. It's just this all-encompassing request for a successful, abundant life, guaranteed by the one who holds the keys to eternity itself.
A huge ask.
A massive ask. So, given they're asking for this eternal spiritual guarantee, health, wealth, protection, life, legacy, they couldn't expect it for free. The sheer size of the request implies a high price. Which brings us neatly to the third key part of the source, the exchange. What was the devotee's side of the contract? What did they have to do to secure this favor?
Yeah, the interaction is explicitly reciprocal. The source details the formal currency of the request, you could say. The worshiper had to be very active in honoring the deity. That's how they formally started and maintained the contract. Their actions were basically payment and proof of commitment, all rolled into one.
Okay, and the source outlines two main forms of payment, right? Starting with the performance aspect. That's the sacred gestures, they honor him, which suggests what? A physical ritual language, a very formal way to show respect and seriousness.
Exactly. It's the embodiment of commitment. If the promise you're seeking is eternal, your commitment has to look serious, demonstrably serious. The body performing these specific formal gestures validates that intention. It turns the prayer from just a thought or a word into something ritualized, observable, almost a binding transaction, like shaking hands on a massive legal agreement. It makes it real.
And that formality had to be paired with something tangible too, which is where the offerings come in. The offering of gifts, they offer their thanks. Now, is this just a simple thank you note, or is the timing important? Does it feel more like an initiation fee, a down payment for the guaranteed abundance they're trying to secure?
I think it functions much more like an investment than just simple gratitude, yes.
Yeah.
These gifts are the material proof that the devotee is willing to sacrifice some of their immediate present-day wealth to acquire that lasting, perhaps generational, wealth and security. It seals the contract. They're essentially trading a fraction of their current stuff now for a promise of guaranteed abundance forever. And the seriousness of the offering likely reflected the huge promise they were asking for.
So this whole system is far from passive waiting. It really hinges on an active partnership. The worshiper must perform specific sacred actions, make real offerings. They have to complete their side of this serious spiritual economic bargain. It really turns devotion into an intensely practical transaction designed to optimize their life outcomes under Anubis's guarantee.
Precisely.
Okay, so to wrap this all up for you, our listener, this deep dive shows that these prayers to Anubis for hope and abundance weren't just vague wishes, they were meticulous spiritual contracts. The whole system was structured to secure comprehensive well-being, physical and material. We're talking health, wealth, and lasting protection, all guaranteed by a deity we discovered had this surprisingly deep involvement in earthly success. And this promise, this eternal prayer, it was totally dependent on the devotee holding up their end of the deal through very specific sacred gestures and substantial offerings.
And that reciprocal requirement, that's really the key takeaway here, I think. We've looked closely at the request for the promise of abundance and that expectation of permanence. So considering this immense focus on tangible outcomes, wealth, health combined with the seriousness of the offerings and gestures described, how does this very practical form of devotion challenge your idea of what prayer is fundamentally for. Is the main goal here the successful navigation of life's material hurdles? Or is the spiritual reward almost secondary to achieving a guaranteed, abundant earthly existence? That's the ultimate question these materialist prayers leave us with.